O great and unexplainable phenomena, you who is, was, and will be, a source of life that inspires such a gathering of life. Experience us as we are, naked and afraid, traumatized and colonized, lost and stolen, hopeful and imaginative, colorful and meaningful. We choose to gather and celebrate life as well as ourselves. We remember, honor, and learn from those who were before us and built the foundation for which we are beginning to build on. We are tired and at times weary from keeping up with human society. Sometimes we need a break, a place to share without fear of judgment. So we gather in a public space to be with the many poetic images of God. Greetings, tribe. Once a month under a full moon, religiously traumatized people and individuals navigating life beyond the four walls of religion gather. We gather to listen, share, and express ideas, feelings, and experiences, such as welcome to another gathering, another full moon gathering, another public space gathering, a gathering off path for like-minded people who are navigating beyond religion, beyond the main path, whatever that may look like. This month or this gathering, we're focusing on the idea of community because community is at the heart of our off-path journeys. It's this theopoetic, ironic play, right? Like one cannot exist without the other. And so in this journey of individuation, we see that community is essential. We don't do this alone. We don't really heal alone. We heal amongst others who are like us or doing things very similar and almost identical to us, vibing and being on that same frequency of thought. And so, again, this month, we're talking about um, inclusive practices, mutual support, collaborative projects. Um, how do we co create community? How do we honor diversity? How do we foster connection and provide sanctuary for all who seek it, whether that's beyond religion or beyond certain ideas or even spiritualities? Um, but yeah, in this space, we are free to be ourselves. And it sounds easy, but it's complex because we're sharing space with others. And so there's certain aspects of ourselves that will not show themselves because they may, offend or trigger or hurt other. And so we try to be very considerate in this space. Um, and so with that, this month, the new moon actually is on the 15th of November, and it's going to be a Scorpio moon. So just a reminder, this is a time of intense emotional renewal as well as transformation because the Scorpio astrologically is a water sign that symbolizes depth, mystery, um, shadow, as well as transformation. So, this particular lunar phase emphasizes themes like letting go, embracing authenticity, diving into our shadows, as well as working through deep rooted fears and desires. So it's an ideal time to set intentions around personal power, emotional healing, intimacy, as well as renewal. And so, on that note, let's get into the dialogue. Welcome. Um, is there anything you want to start us off with?
No, I will add and agree that it is very challenging when we're, trying to reimagine what community does look like, especially outside of like the four walls. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is something that we're excited to actually start talking about, because the complication of it, the complexity of it is also the beauty of it, in my personal understanding and experience. And what we mean by that is it wasn't until we set forth to understand or try to understand things beyond one particular religion or one particular set of beliefs and start to see like these overlapping similarities. This is what then shifted my mindset in terms of what community could look like for people who are, in between spaces, in between religions, in between larger structures. Um, and it's interesting because, you know, Plato mentions in between a lot, but every time he's mentioning in between, he has like this reference to the metaxi, the word metaxi, and where that symbolizes or means like in between, in betweenness, in general. So to be in between things, ideally, is where we find this more relational God, this more relative God, this divine experience that is every day in the mundane, is not sitting high up on a mountain only in a sacred temple place, but is the very air, the ruha, the spirit that we breathe and exhale, and inhale. Um, it's that in between moments, in between traveling, in between people, that we find the beauty of God, as well as the ability to be as very destructive as well. Because there's these polars to things, and so just as much as God symbolizes very much the most beautiful thing we could ever set our eyes on or understand, God also symbolizes the most destructive, ugly thing that we've ever experienced. And that's hard to navigate, right? Especially if we have come from a religion that has conditioned us to believe there is an absolute way and there's an absolute goodness, and we should strive for that absolute goodness. What we mean, we see this in Christianity, for example. It's a very interesting religion because it's a double-edged sword, poetically. On one hand, you can use the words in a certain context to attempt to inspire and motivate and liberate people from their own traumas, doubt, or insecurities. But then on the other hand, the blade also offers control, slavery, conformity. And so we have to be careful in between these two things when approaching or dealing with religion or even spirituality. We have to make sure that theopoetically we haven't gone into Exodus and escaped the Egyptian rule, the empire's rule, and now find ourselves becoming the new emperors in a different place. That's not the goal. That doesn't help us heal. Instead, wherever we go after we've escaped, we have to re identify, we have to rebuild, we have to reconstruct new identities, new meanings, and new ways of life, new language. And so we see this theopoetically in the Bible, a very common sacred text. A great example is the story of Exodus. You know, we keep playing with this theopoetically as an analogy, of how in the present moment we're still dealing with these things. We break away or we escape from structures of belief, families, abusive relationships, whatever that looks like. And then when we escape, we become the very thing that was oppressing us. And so these stories are meant to help us see these parts of ourselves as human beings, see these human aspects and qualities, and say, stop repeating this. Don't repeat this. It's not helping. It didn't help a millennia ago, and it ain't helping a millennia later. You know, it's one of these patterns that we have to start paying attention to, talk about, analyze, and see, dang, in my own personal life, am I going through an exodus? If so, I got to be careful not to repeat what I escaped or become what I escaped from. And that is very, very complicated and hard. And that is why also we have community like this. We create spaces where we can meet and talk about these complex things that maybe you can't talk to your neighbor about, or your parents about, or your friends about, because they're on different frequencies, right? And you may find yourself awakening in context to others, and it's hard to be able to communicate these things to people. They look at you all crazy, like, eh, if anything, they push you to go back to sleep, or go back to conforming, where you're in a process of awakening, and you're like, wait, I see things different, and maybe I shouldn't do these habits, maybe I should change this aspect of myself. And then once you start doing that, you find yourself surrounded by people that are in opposition to you. They're the polar to you. And it's hard to let those people and those things go, because we've assigned or attached emotional value, like love, compassion, even as in some aspects, we've claimed people to be our extended family, our best friend, someone we trust and we can, tell secrets to. And then all the while, this person is, let's say, stuck in a process of conformity, and they just don't know how to be your friend or your family member or your trusted person authentically. Maybe what ends up happening is a mask is developed, and then it becomes, well, why are we still doing this? I've changed, you haven't changed. Is this contractual? Like, are we both benefiting from each other in some way? So it gets really complex. It's not that easy to just say, oh, yeah, there's a community outside of religion and outside of these things that, because people raise speculation, like, is it a cult? Like, is it repeating what I've been told is demonic? And then that's another complex issue, right? Like, you start showing up or being part of communities that are trying to exist beyond religious control, and you find yourself being labeled, like in a demonic, demeaning way, like that's wrong. And so you have this repeating, conditioned sort of theopoetic voice in your mind saying, don't do that. That's wrong. God wouldn't like that. And it's like, wait, what? Where is this coming from? Like, where did we learn this? And so, yeah, for me, reconstruction is at the core of this community. Like, we have to reconstruct ourselves, you know, stepping away from old patterns. Like, okay, maybe in the 90s you would have caught me doing some crazy stuff, right? Or some conforming type stuff, But these days I just see things different. We see things different. Our perspective has shifted. And once you see something, you can't just like ignore it, like it's gonna bother you, it's gonna haunt you, you know?
I think that, and to add to everything you've said, which is amazing, and also we resonate with it, that as an observationalist, of life and my own personal experiences and just my own path, trying to know more, be more aware, also understanding that I have to be part of a society that is still trying to move forward, also with old traditions, old beliefs, and things that really have harmed people throughout history. And so when I was listening to you speak and I'm thinking about community, I feel like those that may have been harmed by a religious group within the four walls, whatever kind of community they came from, and they're trying to find something else. So, like a refuge, so to speak, they're coming with those traumas from those places. So they still carry that. And I'm thinking about, like, for example, when we think about church, we think about, oh, I'm coming to a place and everything that I've gone through, everything's going to be ironed out. I'm going to receive clarity. I'm going to feel no pain anymore and things like that, which is, for me, I think is very unrealistic. And then also for the person on the other end as receiving these people that are coming from these dark places, whatever that may look like, they feel like they need to save them. And it's not, I don't think, and I'm not saying this is everyone, but from things I've heard or I have experienced, that it becomes very tricky because when you are in the receiving end, I guess, of helping that person within the four walls, a lot of the times we forget to understand where that person came from, what they're experiencing at the moment. And so then in some religious, communities, it's more about, well, you made it here, everything is going to change, it's going to be all better. It's not really about sitting with that person and truly understanding their differences. It's more about, well, from this point on, this is what this is what you're going to be partaking in. This is a culture in here. These are the things that we read on, and you then start to adapt these new ways. For some person, it'll be, oh, these are like new skills that I'm learning in order to become like righteous and things like that. But then it's like you're pushing away all your experiences, all that trauma, like in the back burner somewhere. Like it's not even in sight anymore because now you're adopting these things cold turkey, like this new belief. Yes, everything's going to work because so and so says, and this is also part of the community believes these things, right? But then it's like you're not considering everything else. It's like you're ignoring those things. Like, how are you going to move forward if you still have this baggage on you? It's going to be quite overwhelming. Like, you learning something new, for those that may have never practiced something in religion or something like that, they've never maybe adapted to those things. What if someone is just coming from um what do you call it, they don't believe in God, so they're atheists, so they're coming from that kind of demographic, right? And they've never went to church, never was part of the community. And then it's like, well, now they're going to have to acquire new skills. but then also hold on to this baggage. That's very overwhelming to someone. And that's why a lot of people, they look for other outlets to receive this kind of support. A lot of people, they go to counseling, therapy, they do shamanism, they do things that are outside of the norms of religious four walls, i.e., a community. Um, and when you're not part of that, it's like, from my experience, I would hear what, my members would say or would believe, like immediately, like it's just this belief of, well, everyone that's out there and they're not here with us right now, they're the problem. And, like we need to go out there and, spread the word of God and things like that. But then it's like, but we're all part of God. Even everyone's experiences is under that. It's like under that umbrella. You can't pick and choose which one stands out more than the other, which one seems to, express more light, you know? Like there's still darkness in it, even in the teachings and things. There's still things that are being spoken about that are very hurtful to someone. And there's also the part of when people, like for Christians, like, or Catholic believers, that um when they talk about Jesus Christ and his life, but towards the end, that's dark. That's being spoken about. And then it's only being used in certain times or certain events. But then if someone comes in with, their issues, oh, that's too much. Like, you know, like the boundary, like there's a line drawn right here. And I'm the person in charge here. So, you came to me, so I'll direct you to the right place. Um, and then that right there just feels like what we've experienced outside of that, what brought us here. It like we're experiencing that again. Like you're telling me that there's like this definite solution right now for me in my life. There is no definite solution because everything is always changing. And so we believe in the unknown, which is God, really, right? But then we tell ourselves, like, no, like that, like there's either a limit or uh there's just like a polar to that. But it's so like finite, it's so definite. And so people want that definite, like, yes, because I no longer want to hurt. I don't want to be in pain, you know, but there's no such thing. We go through emotions, our environments affect us anywhere we are, even inside the four walls, we're being affected. Like, there's no way to escape this. I think it's part of existence. It's part of all the natural, you know, um, natural life, everything around us. It's just present. So then what I think about is how someone is coming in to, let's just say, a new community, or let's just say for this community, um, public space. And they're coming in with, baggage, right? They're going to check in, but they have baggage. A lot of people may not think that they're either not suitable to try something new as this because they're carrying baggage and they feel like they have to be some form of like this perfectionist or someone that is not carrying those things to be part of this. And that's that toxic positivity thing where it's like, no, no, like community is not that. Community should be about understanding, but then also is you the person that might be seeking this kind of service or this kind of support. You yourself have to understand that you have the baggage. You can't just like not, believe and think that that's it. Like now what you're doing is you're repeating those old patterns of, those beliefs that you carried from other communities within the four walls. You're carrying that now in this. So of course, if you're part of it or you try it, you're gonna think, well, this doesn't work for me, and you'll go somewhere else. You'll keep going through communities, 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 communities. Um, and like I said, as an observationalist, and I'm observing these things, like it's something that's so reoccurring. Is that a lot of us we don't want to take accountability of our own patterns, our own triggers that keep coming up, especially if we haven't gone through uh, other ways of, you know, e- exploring, getting that help in order for us to do the self help or the self love.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. Thank you for contributing that to this space. Seriously. I think a lot of us would agree. Well said. Yeah, it's very complicated, right? When we're trying to be part of community, create community, especially when the examples that we were raised on were not that helpful. You know, they were helpful to an extent. Like a lot of people find it so funny when they say, if you want some structure or discipline in your life, join the military. And it's like we see like over the last decade alone, all the dark traumatic shit that a person would deal with while being a soldier, right? But on the other hand, they shipped you into shape, so to speak. They made you a more accountable, individual, self-relying person, right? Because that's what the military does overall to soldiers, warriors, right? They make them into these kind of archetypical people that start adopting specific patterns. And the more frequently you practice these patterns, the more it becomes your identity. So, most people, for example, in the military, they go through boot camp and it's like they're not used to maybe push ups or sit ups or running, but they do it so much repetitively every day, sometimes multiple times a day, that by the time they get to their unit in about a month or two, they're at a level of now they can identify as a soldier versus a civilian. And this plays an effect on us psychologically, right? It has positive and it has negative, right? We see, for example, our brethren and sisters in the Marine Corps. They're known for, being. They even gave them like nicknames like Jarhead for a reason. This idea that their mind is empty like a jar, and it's easily can be opened, and you can put things in it and close it and it'll hold it. That type of thing. So they're playing on this concept of how much they've been conditioned as warriors to be vessels for whatever the fight needs, whatever the military needs. The Marines adapt, they overcome. That's also one of their famous mottos, like they take pride in that, being adaptable. And so they're known to be sent into really horrific, warlike military situations. And they trust that they'll be able to adapt and overcome. But what we're getting at is when you have a civilian that is critically thinking, that's not good for the military mindset, right? In the military, you follow three basic things, be at the right place, the right time, with the right uniform. That's how you rank up and excel in any military career, is doing those three basic things But when you think about it, in between those three basic things, there's no room for critical thinking. Like everything's being provided for you. Go left. And how you go left, how fast you go left determines how good of a soldier you are. You see what I'm saying? Like when we start looking at these kind of value systems and see that, for example, a person that transitioned out of that way of thinking is now civilian and they're trying to adapt to the work life or the civilian life, it's a completely different frequency of, thinking, and identities are different too.
Mhm.
So, like, personal experience coming out of the military with all my accommodations and all my experience, I couldn't get really a supervisory role or executive role. Like people with degrees had those roles. You see what I'm saying? So even with all that knowledge and that firsthand experience, when you come back to the civilian world, they have no use for it. And we never thought about that, right? Like as we're signing the papers, signing our life away, so to speak, to become, property, we're not thinking, oh, like on the back end when I get out, how can I use this? Honestly, we were so young. Our thought was we were going to be in the military until we retired, sergeant major of the army, maybe type
Mhm.
shit, like, but that was a goal that helped my identity grow in a military environment, is what we're getting at. And so you can see this in other areas of life. Like you can apply this in a lot of different areas and see that people are identifying themselves with exterior values or with concepts being a value system. Like how well are you at this? How well can you perform at this? And when you strive to become the best at that and only that, you're just, a knife. And it's like, well, what can a knife do but so many things? Can a knife help you with agriculture? Can a knife heal a wound? It's like a knife can only be used in a very defensive, violent, even killing way. Like you can kill someone with a knife, but you can't heal someone with a knife. And so when you think about as people, what we're becoming, the identities, the values, like what are we striving for really? And this is where we get into like the decolonizing aspect of trying to develop community outside the four walls of religion, especially colonized religion. Like we must decolonize ourselves. Like we must actively be in this process because if we're not, then we will fall back into the colonization of things. Like because that was our basic conditioning. That was what we knew maybe first, and it's always hard to break free from that first learning.
I love that you mentioned that about the colonization and how we still see it, in our lives. And it's so interesting because colonization has become traditions in our cultures. I think maybe, well, I would say most cultures, yeah, right? Like this is how I see it. So being a parent, we are also parenting under colonized religion, which then trickles down into the education that came from colonized religion, because we can't forget, and that's something that's so pivotal in like understanding this, uh, where we continue to see colonization. Because I don't think they really teach that, like how education here, particularly in the US, and how it started. And I know you've mentioned this a few times before in other gatherings, and just how it already had started just for like the common folk, people that were not educated, like they did not know how to read, and they were given a Bible, to kind of like have also these set of rules, right? Which then started to align with laws of the land that were created by men. And so it's so difficult. And now I'm speaking personally, like when you're raising teenagers or just children and you're trying to prepare them for what is to come next. So them becoming independent adults. And how can you do that? Also, the challenge is when there has already been some kind of trauma at the beginning. So if the parent was challenged with their own trauma, right, to then becoming a parent, and then the children also being exposed to trauma because of the parents' parenting. So the passed down tools of their ancestors who were traumatized, and also like living members of the matriarch or patriarch, whatever that looks like. And so it's like on both ends. So whether it's at home, whether it's that the children are getting the information from school, it's coming from the same umbrella, which is capitalism, which is colonialism, like all these other things that come out of that, race, all the issues that we experience in society and things like that. Like there is no right and wrong way to kind of guide another human being, but we're taught that this is how you treat someone else, or you do this, you do that. You get this back if you partake in this. And then it sounds like it's perfect. It's like a perfect blueprint of how I should approach life. But there is no such thing. And so when we're caught in between, like what we've been told and taught versus our experience, now we blame ourselves. Like we're the issue, we are the problem. And then we start hating ourselves. And then once we start hating ourselves, then what happens? It's a reflection on everything else. Then you hate everything else around you. And so if you're walking like this, or you have these already embedded beliefs in you, and you haven't like sat with them or discussed it in some kind of way, expressed it, uh, you are joining communities with that. Like you're carrying that. You might be triggered to say something, or because of your beliefs, the conditioning, right? You might interpret something a certain way, and maybe that wasn't even the meaning of that. Now you're creating your own meaning of what that was, right? And then it just becomes very chaotic. And then you're carrying that, you're sharing those thoughts and those things with people, which absorb energy. So you're here just spreading this negative energy, just going around. And a lot of us don't know that it might be negative energy. Because we're so um, conditioned to believe that when someone is behaving some familiar way, like it takes me back to like being in school and sitting up straight, making sure you're speaking clearly, you're doing like all these things that makes you seem like you're a bright student, right? um you feel like you have to meet all these expectations, and you might do this with strangers. You're then like um you're basically like falling in line to like in uniform to what everyone else is doing. And that's when you are then lacking like those critical skills. So it's like we have forgotten what that is, what that means, how to be a critical person, which can look like someone that is observing the situation. They're not acting just on impulse. They're sitting back on, okay, well, this is what's happening. Um, and then now maybe you're feeling some kind of emotion. Well, why am I feeling this way? Like, why am I acting this way about that? That has nothing to do with me. It's hard for us. We don't do that. A lot of us don't do that. It might take us years, or maybe for some people, if they really do try to apply themselves, it might, start to improve in a short period of time. But the whole thing is like it's really not trying to be in a race with yourself and who you are becoming. And I think that is the like the biggest elephant in the room is really trying to be yourself amongst other people that they may think that they are being themselves, but they're really posing as what this I guess you can say whoever they look up to or person that's living that they're trying to either impress. So again, like almost like a child to a parent, like I'm trying to impress you and meet these expectations. But that's not you being you. You're just doing the things that other person or thing is allowing you to do in order to have acceptance or like be accepted some sort of way. And like yeah, like we just mimic everything. So I've been part of different communities. It can look very different. It can be social gatherings, it can be group chats, it can be just anything that you just sign up yourself for. And sometimes the what is it like the mission of the community, like what people thought it was going to be, it ends up not being that, you know so it almost like it doesn't leave room for like other things that are beneficial for the person for their growth. Is more of, well, here is the community and we're open to anything. So that whole like we're open to anything may look like, well, I'm going to share like all these things, like they're saying they're open to everything. This is okay to do. And so once you start seeing that, then it's like, whoa, like that is not what we meant. That's not, you know. So it's like there is this fine line when it comes to, joining a community, what that looks like, even beyond those four walls. So like right now, we're beyond the four walls. We're here and we're gathering in a screen with technology. Or right now we're being listened to and things like that. So like it's just like so complicated. It's so challenging to create a community is really not as easy as, well, here's the doctrine and just follow that. For some people that works for them. And maybe that's okay. It's it's okay, I think, if it's not harming you and it's not harming others.
Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Waldron. Just want to take this moment to welcome you again to public space and remind you of how this community is dedicated to supporting individuals like you and me who have experienced religious trauma or find themselves in between or looking for self or God, as well as community. We exist beyond the four walls of colonized religion. Here, we create a safe and vibrant space where members can explore and share spirituality, stories, art, and intellectual inquiry. Join our newsletter. That way, you can stay up to date on the journey of healing, self discovery, and creative expression. Together, we'll foster a supportive community that empowers individuals to reclaim their voice, embracing their unique journeys, and find solace and strength in the company of like minded individuals. On the topic of people that are around or people that join this particular community, let's say public space, and they are joining with, like you said before, their baggage. What makes public space different from, say, a Christian church that may say, all are welcome, come as you are? The difference is that when you come to this space with your baggage, the only real, maybe you could say, condition is that you're open to change. Because we think a lot of people join communities and they think, oh, if we come as we are, or come with all my stuff, you'll accept me as I am. But see, what they're not understanding is that you aren't yourself, because all that baggage you're carrying is preventing you from being yourself. So when a community like public space is saying, we accept you for who you are, not for who you may be portraying to be, not for who you are conforming to be, but who you really are. And who we really are does not lead us to some psychopath, violent, horrible version of humans. It leads us to being a child again, returning back to this childlike state where we don't have these notions of differences, because racism was conditioned into us, it was taught to us. And so as a child, returning back to and being like a child, referencing and playing off of the Christian interpretation of that, right? um does not mean to be childish, but to return to this state of decolonization, like before you were colonized. And that colonization, like you mentioned, happens almost instantly when a human being these days is born, right? It's happening when a mother's placenta is stolen by the hospital. That's an act of colonization. We just don't see it that way, but if you slow down and you start looking at these things, they are doing things against our will. They're doing things without our knowledge. They're doing things in a controlling manner where they're controlling us and they're exploiting us, taking from us the things that came literally from our body and claiming it as their own. That is part of colonization. Then, on top of that, here in America, just to be frank, learning English is an act of colonization. Like, the English language is packed with colonial thought, colonial issues, colonial desires. To go deep right quick, when we think about present day issues like pornography, that may very well, more than likely, come from the times in which colonial leaders, colonizers, were enslaving people and forcing on this new identity that's hypersexuality. The only way you can exist and be beautiful in the eyes of the colonizer is if you're naked or you're doing something sexually appealing that, to me or for me, that I find attractive. And then we start to see in the deeper, complex spreading of colonization, for example, males may adopt desires, sexual desires that are not naturally of their own, but have been conditioned. For example, why, most or a lot of men, not most, but a lot of men um, of color par- particularly enjoy seeing a Caucasian or light skin female, for example, or male. Even no matter your sexuality, these things are still at play. Like what you like has been colonized. And so when you prefer the lighter version of something, we see this even when they did that psychological study with children and the dolls, and that's another great example of why these children were saying the better doll is the white doll. And you had, children of dark skin, of color, loving and preferring the white doll. And it's like, where did you learn this? Why do you think exactly like this other set of human beings? And so we started putting these patterns together and see this is part of colonization. It starts in the education at a very, very young age. You know, we could spend hours talking about this because there's so many ways to see colonization on the most mundane levels, but yet people ignore it. People, for sake of argument, ignorance is bliss, right? People prefer not to know so that they can enjoy their life just a little bit better. Because part of awakening and part of being this in this community is to see these things, identify these things that are challenging, and face these things for ourselves and collectively. It's not going to be some president that decides how you think and how a nation of people should be acting. It's us on the individual level that come together collectively, forming communities of thought. You don't have to have a membership card to be a part of this community. Every person that's listening, and yes, we have global listeners, people on any kind of continent in the world, anyone in space, in the vast cosmos that's listening and picking up these frequencies is part of this community, because this community is not physically anchored into something like our colonizers would suggest. They taught us these physical things to focus on, but as we step off path and become more of ourselves, we see that we're more than just physical beings. To be a human is more than just to have a human body. We're starting to see this even with the amputees. You have humans that are becoming more like bionic, sort of speak. Like they have amputee arms and legs. They are no less human. They are just as human. And so this is another great example of we have to stop focusing so much on the physical. Like people are so addicted, perhaps, to gathering physically to show the appearance that they are supporters and that they are believing and that they are the same and that they just ultimately, like children, just want to be part of, they want to be included, and it's sick when these colonizing structures play on that insecurity, that fear that we have at a very deep, deep human level, where we have a fear of not being part of. And so we do things so that we can be part of, no matter what it is. We just want to be part of, you know. But when we start to critically think, right, we start to see, okay, yes, I we can't escape this being part of. So community is inevitable, but how we approach community can change. It can be different. It doesn't have to be the same way. It doesn't have to be the thing that we've been practicing for over a millennia. We can change. This is the time to change. We're in the age of Aquarius, where people and technology are going to start becoming more and smarter. We already have AI. There's no coincidence that during this astrological time period, we're starting to see advancements in technology. People are starting to awaken more than ever in a large context. You're starting to see more protests, more revolutions. Pay attention and start seeing, like, the world may look horrible right now, but what you're probably not seeing is that there's revolution. There's people pushing back. They're not accepting the conformity. They're not accepting the colonizers' standard way of living. And so, yes, that's going to be violent to an extent, because the colonizer will not let us go. The colonizer needs us to play a role as the controlled slave or subject in their large experiment or plantation, you know? And so this community is not going to be trending. We're not going to be talking about trending things because when we're off path, we're not doing what everyone else is doing. We're doing different things, you know? Like we're not talking about things like holidays and stuff so much, because these things tie us to, like you were saying, the colonized traditions. They confuse us, you know, especially having a family, right? You have young kids, Christmas rolls around, which is a big one, a big colonizing holiday, right? That is so complicated because Christianity has intertwined itself into this holiday, right? Which was orchestrated and created by the Romans, another empire, right? And so they used this to control a certain group of people who were hyper religious. At the time, they were identified as the Hebrews. They were so focused and scared, fearful of their God. The Roman emperor was like, how do I step in between that? Adopt their God, make them believe that their God has ordained me to be their leader. Now you fast forward, you can see how it all really plays together and makes sense, and how dangerous religious thoughts have been used to be weaponized against the people. And one moment you're thinking you're being baptized and being renewed and you're part of something great. And on the other end, they're just gearing you up for their colonizing war against more people. So, this evangelical mission of go out and make believers, basically go make copycats. They have to learn what I taught you verbatim. Because guess what? There's going to be a test at the end of your life. If you don't pass that test, you're not going to make it to heaven, the special place. And it's like when you think about this rhetoric, it was so creatively, masterfully put together. It makes people not even think that something's off. It's so believable when you speak like that and you put it in that interpretation or context.
It's interesting you say that because I feel like a lot of the fear that we have been conditioned to believe about death comes from that concept of, well, you got to make sure you meet or you hit these points, before you transition so that you can go to heaven. So, to this place. So, everyone is just like running around, stressing themselves to meet these expectations and really killing themselves if you think about it. Or people, and it's interesting because I think we've had this conversation recently. People trying to preserve their youth so much. Like this, and I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing, but for those that are just afraid of, this idea of death approaching. So we think about getting old because we see it. A lot of human beings, once, they become old, they become or transition into something else. They're no longer here physically. But then we forget that death can be here at this moment right now, tomorrow. So is this conditioning like things that we have allowed in our lives to just take over? And then we teach our kids the same things. And then they start making their own choices, their decisions based on what they had observed or listened to. And they just become like many clones of us, repeating the same thing over and over. And then we love saying, oh, yeah, history repeats itself. Or if not, oh, that's so cute. You remind me of your uncle, so and so, that used to do the same kind of thing, or your dad, your mom, whatever that sounds like or looks like. And it's like we just take on these things. We carry these things. And for a lot of uh, our youth and our years in our youth, we take on these beliefs, these notions, just based on fear. And religion does the same for most. Uh, it tends to do that to people, and then that's never spoken about, right? That's why I think religious trauma is still so new to the world. It's just like a sprinkle of certain people or populations are interested in that, and it's this idea like because it was like this idea was created that it could never harm somebody. It could only create this light, this love, and things like there's just no way that it can be harmful to someone and their life experience because that person's identity is just embedded in that only from when they wake up till when they go to sleep. It's embedded in them. It's like this ongoing clock, so to speak, like you're going by the seconds, by the hour. Like I got to make sure, like, this is who I am. This is who I am. I'm going to practice this. I'm going to regurgitate. I'm going to repeat this over and over and over so I can finally sing the song that has been expected of me. And so I'll make that audience happy. And when they're smiling, it's just, something that will mirror with me. And so that's how I'll know I'm doing the right thing or the good thing. But that's not really how life is. And so it's not fair when we then do expect like other people to just kind of get it off the bat. And then we take that on like that failure, whatever it may look like, or that setback. And we really think it's us. But it's not us, it's just our beliefs. And when we say beliefs, what I mean is like our thoughts, what we allow to just sit in our minds and just take over that headspace, right? And because I used to think that just even that word alone, belief, is just like it had to do with being religious. And that was it. No, it's a word, but obviously its meaning is bigger than that. It's your belief is what you become, what you are becoming. It's always in this process. And so that's why it's so hard for many of us to say, well, and who are you? Who's like your name, like, and then at times you're like, I guess I'm this, based on those ideas. We've been doctrinated from when we were little, and we didn't choose those things. Like I was thinking back before when you were speaking, um, when a baby is born, they don't choose the colors they wear. Like, where did this come from? Really? Like having a baby wear specific colors. What does that have to do with the baby? And I don't even think it really has to do with with their, sexual organs. Because if we're thinking like in primitive times, People were not selecting, oh, I'm going to choose pink and I'm going to choose blue. Like that started somewhere where I guess like this colonized idea, something, came up to create that. There had to be some kind of substance that, it was just, it was present and it just wanted something in return. And so these were the expectations. This is what you got to do. So, for example, if I am, let's say, the owner or I'm the lead of this village, and you're looking for a place to stay, and there's you can occupy the space here. They Your child needs to wear this, or this is what, like all of these rules that come with it, and then you'll do all of that in order for you to make sure you and your family have some kind of safe haven, so to speak. So it's like all these things that we follow, all these things that we believe is the right thing. It did not happen from like when we were an atom, if you think about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that was just like how, like, this is not just a way, like, telling someone, well, you're only a good person if you follow this faith, this religion. Uh, you go to these schools, you eat like this, or you wear your hair like that, you speak like this. Is very tiring, to see it, to have lived it, and to be reminded of it, from my own life experience. So it's just hard when a lot of people, they don't see or leave room for like this kind of thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Um, to wrap up, there was one thing we wanted to highlight in the midst of all this, was that these days, for myself and Yesenia, please add your perspective after mine. That these days, community for me is collaborating with people and collaborating with people to create things, collaborating with people to work on things has been a form or a way of forming community with people, long distance, short distance, it doesn't really matter. But um, we just wanted to uplift two community members that we are collaborating with via podcast. And so we have Between Shelves, which is a fairly new podcast that me and Dr. Rafael Reyes, the third, have collaborated on. And we continue to work on that collaboration. And it's a beautiful thing. But that project or that collaboration was in the making for years. It wasn't something overnight. And that's something we wanted to highlight. Sometimes community doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen within a month or a day or a week. Sometimes it takes longer to cultivate, to genuinely and authentically cultivate and establish mutual trust. Another great project that we have collaborated with a public space community member is The Naked Journey with
Mm.
Jasenia. And we are currently working on this project and hope to come out with season one of a new kind of season. And we hope to do that really soon. We've been working hard at that. But these opportunities where we have collaborations has been really powerful and profound because it's really pushed me to learn things about myself that we couldn't learn just creating by ourselves. So, like, we can't compare really anything that we create, but if we're looking at things that we create independently and it's only us versus projects that we've collaborated with, in my personal opinion, we feel like the collaboration projects are more profound, are more beneficial, are deeper. It's always a beautiful thing for me to work with people and come together and share ideas. It's not always about, well, what is Aaron's vision? And like I come in and dictating or something. It's not like that with me, honestly. It's a very much give and take. It's a constant dialogue, you know. So yeah, we just wanted to highlight that because you don't have to necessarily join this community per se. Like you gotta get a membership and all that, but you can remain at the distance in which you are but still consider yourself a community member. It's not like, you need to wear this as a badge of honor. This is honestly for the individual, like for the people. This is not trying to collect followers and subscribers and all that stuff. We're not competing with that structure of community development. What we are doing is we're trying to create a community that is decentralized. And so we're a facilitator, orchestrating an opportunity to organize and come together and share. But that does not make us supreme leader, like hell at it, like that's not what this is. This is very much so a friendly conversation, sharing intellect, spirituality, things we've encountered, things we've learned. Um, So yeah, we just want to take this time to remind our listeners, our community members, that we've this whole time over the last year or so have been trying to help you reimagine what community could look like beyond the four walls of religion. And we're constantly still trying to work on that. It's a constant development, constant deconstruction, a constant decolonizing. We cannot show up to these spaces pretending. We have to show up to these spaces authentic. We told someone a while ago that it's so theopoetic and just incredible how public space is a place that you're not locked out. Like no one's locking doors here. You know, the way you enter public space is by being authentic. Like if you are being authentic with yourself and you're on this process of becoming your better self, your true self, then that is the key to get you in the door to public space. So me as a facilitator, we are not dictating who can come and go. People decide whether they're coming or going. People decide this for various reasons. And all the while, in the grand scheme of it all, it doesn't really matter. Because it's not enough to matter to fight over it and hound people and force people and create conditions for people to show up. Like, what does this do? When at the essence of it, this initiative is really for you. Like, we cannot be a healer unless we've done a significant amount of healing for ourselves. And then we have a surplus of just knowledge, tips, but we don't have the answers. And so when any path maker enters public space, it's not to dominate, it's not to control, and it's not to make people feel like they're less than, but it's to share equally across. There's no hierarchy here. As much as people may project that hierarchy because that's what they're accustomed to on the main path from their conditioned background, from their colonized experiences, from their religious trauma, even. Maybe you come to this space with these preconceived notions or this baggage, and that's all right. But if you're willing to stick around and actually be part of public space, it requires you to do something that's no short of a miracle, something that doesn't happen every day. And that is to begin trusting yourself, knowing yourself, becoming who you really are. That's not for the gram, that's not for YouTube. And we don't make any money off that. That's not what this is for. This is really for the person seeking that more in-depth spiritual walk. And it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, not by choice. It's not for everybody because not everybody is going to be able to enter public space because they're not ready. And because you're not ready, you shouldn't judge yourself either. Like you should just take accountability and ask yourself, why am I not ready to enter a space like public space? Start there because we assure you on the other end here, we're not judging you. We're welcoming because we get it because we were there. We were on that other side. And that is where the deep empathy just starts, surging into this space.
Yeah, I loved what you said about public space. I think for me, it has been, a place where I can, have these dialogues, certain topics, which you do come up with for every gathering. It's not like we're just in here just talking about whatever we want, but there is some kind of theme that you bring up and that evokes this kind of dialogue. So this going in depth or going into like that deeper part of you, which I enjoy, is not something that I come across like everywhere. And I think because we're part of a society where we're like in this love and hate relationship with each other, like we show up at certain times based on what we can get out of it. And then once that stops, we're back to the, well, I actually don't like that, or I don't like you. I don't like we're picking and choosing when to come together when it fits, when. And so, like, I would love to see other people joining and just sharing life. Uh, like you said, like being at a place where they feel comfortable with themselves to acknowledge those parts of themselves where maybe in the past they felt like they needed to hide, like there is nothing to prove here. There is no, you need an IQ of whatever that number is. Um, there is none of that, but it really has helped me to make sense of things I have gone through in my life and even how to curb any anxiety, fear, anger, things that I used to wear. And at times I may still have to work on. And that's still something that as humans we have to do because every day something new is happening. There's something that might be affecting us some kind of way. And so, even those things. So just that authenticity, like being authentic really means to just becoming aware of that part of you, like becoming aware of the things you went through that you're still going through and that you are trying to, like have those skills to kind of like or tools to move forward. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely. All right. So to wrap up this month's gathering, thank you to everyone that joined. Thank you to everyone that was here in spirit. Thank you to everyone who's listening. We really appreciate it. A little success for public space. We have listeners on 3 different continents and it's growing. Thank you so much for our global listeners. You are definitely very much part of this community as well as the movement for us to become ourselves. And no matter what language you are speaking and practicing, no matter what culture, this space is a multi faith, multicultural invite to humans. This is for humans. This is not, you know, telling you whether you're a male or female or transgender or whatever you decide to identify. None of that stuff matters here because you're accepted. We get it. You don't have to prove, like Jasenia was saying, you don't have to prove how masculine or feminine you are here. You don't have to prove how smart you are. You don't have to prove anything. We show up in love. We unite in love, not in fear or anger. So, on that note, really quick, we recently published our first book, paperback and ebook, A Path-Maker, An Unfollowable Path. We highly suggest giving it a read or, you know, um, giving it a purchase. It will definitely be worth the investment because in this book, we are breaking down what does it really mean to be a path maker. And so anyone that's been in this community or has been around long enough knows that a path maker is a complex thing that we're constantly trying to become. It's not something that we achieve and then we're done. It's something of an ongoing pursuit. It's how we think. We developed this sort of archetype that's piecing together different things to help us embody the Pathmaker archetype, regardless of gender, culture, religion, or even political views. Like these things don't affect us as much as we think. It's inverted. And so when we start to pay attention to that, developing becomes a little bit easier, becoming becomes a little bit easier. So if you're interested in that, check it out. The ebook actually has hyperlinks to the books we're citing. So if you're into that, get the ebook. It's definitely worth the investment because we have already set aside these specific links to help you see exactly what books we're talking about, which is kind of cool. I thought, like you always buy books and I always thought as a child, wouldn't it be cool if like I could just click this and it just takes me to whatever the hell they're talking about, you know? So yeah, that's something that we did. So definitely check that out. If you're part of the newsletter, it's the link is in the newsletter, so you can definitely purchase from there. If you're not part of the newsletter, we invite you. Please join. It's free. It's just a way to stay connected so that you know what's happening, what's to come. And we like to share like little, videos or little times of speaking messages here and there in the newsletter. So it's definitely helpful for a lot of people we saw. So we're keeping it going. So please join us. On that note, be well, trust your intuition, and we'll see you next month. And good luck during the Scorpio moon. A lot of reflection, a lot of inward, in depth kind of letting go of things that we've just been carrying. Maybe like that baggage we mentioned earlier in the dialogue. There's things that we're carrying that we should definitely let go during this time of uh, Scorpio moon. It gives us this ample energy to just let things go that maybe are super difficult to let go, like addictions, people, ideas, bad habits. So we will definitely be doing rituals and meditations and stuff like that to help us change because we are not perfect. And so, on that note, everyone, be well and take care of yourselves. Hi, Dr. Waldron here again. If you like what you're hearing and what you're hearing is helping you, we encourage you to further support this project by becoming a patron. Join us on Patreon to support public space. As a reminder, This is an online community, and it's dedicated to helping individuals who have experienced religious trauma find healing, identity, and connection. Your patronage fuels a safe space where stories are shared, guidance is offered, and journeys of self discovery unfold. To show my appreciation, we've built a structure of benefits for our patrons. For example, you'll get free ebooks, enjoying a free digital copy of my latest work on healing, metaspirituality, dreams, and self discovery. You'll get a signed paperback book as a special thank you from us. You also get exclusive content like private podcasts, guided meditations, as well as exclusive between film dialogues that are being hosted once a month. We also offer dream interpretation to help you understand and better clarify what you're dreaming. What messages are hidden behind the unconscious mind? By supporting public space, you're not just joining a community, you're helping create a sanctuary for those reclaiming their spirituality and identity after trauma. Together, we build a brighter, more compassionate future.